Well, hello there everybody, I'm Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. I'm the Magic the Gathering content creator equivalent of making Warhammer content every single Wednesday and having someone, at least one person in the comment section say, are you giving up Magic? In last week's video I talked about why people lose their minds when you kit bash women's heads onto Marines, and my god, some of the reaction from the Warhammer community was vitriolic, childish, shitty. But today I'm going to talk about the new Space Marine Codex that's coming out this week. This is the old Codex. I'm not important enough yet to get codexes early from Games Workshop. So this weekend I will be picking up 3 things that I've pre-ordered: the Space Marine Codex, the Necron Codex, and of course the Silent King model to finish off my 2,000 point Necron army, because it's fucking cool. So I've been doing a lot of anticipation reading and watching of videos and Googling and just absorbing as much information as I can prior to the Codex coming out. And I've come to the conclusion that there are some clear winners and some clear losers within the Space Marine Codex. So keep in mind that I don't have the Codex as of yet in my hands. I get it on Saturday morning, but I've been doing a lot of reading, a lot of discussion with friends, and I wanted to share with you where I think the best winners and the best losers are at first glance. Bearing in mind some of this stuff probably needs to be played with, right? I mean, I'm sat here moaning at the Sanguinary Guard having got an extra wound to make them kind of like flying Terminators. That's probably unreasonable, and they're probably a perfectly reasonable unit without that. So I'm going to begin with the negative, because everyone loves the negative. What are the biggest losers in the new Codex? What has changed that makes them significantly worse? Well, that's kind of easy. It's the Scouts, okay? Scouts, they served a purpose. They were a troop tax filler. They were a recon unit as such that you could deploy outside your deployment zone, closer to objectives, and also just to spread out, get table quarters for engage, and help screen against deep strike. I've got some Scouts with snipers that I was very happy with how I painted. And then I got some Scouts that I was getting round to painting. It's one of my many Space Marine projects that I need to finish. Problem is, I won't be finishing these anytime soon, because for some reason Scouts have been put into the elite slot. Now, bear in mind, Scouts have been elites before. I'm pretty sure when I was playing as a kid they were elites. I don't remember them being troops. And they've been a core part of Blood Angels lists, by the way, because the combat blades plus the Blood Angel stratagems give you extra attacks and the ability to wound. They become quite a ferocious close combat unit that people don't want to spend their time getting rid of because they're so, well, kind of crappy, but they can still output damage in close combat. Now they're elites, and they haven't got the wound increase that the rest of the Firstborn Marines have gotten, which I'll come to in the winners section. They're one of the few new units that haven't. So they have 1 wound, a 4-up save, they're now an elite, and I'll be honest with you, the Space Marine Codex is so thick with good stuff, why would you want to take Scouts? So maybe there's a strategic use for them, maybe they're the cheapest thing you can screen units out with, and they might still have some use there. And the Sniper Rifle's got an extra point of AP, so there is that. But honestly, I think we won't be seeing Scouts much for the rest of 9th edition. The next loser is the Aggressors. Now here's a Flame Firestorm Gauntlet one, but the Firestorm Gauntlet ones are good at, you know, sitting on objectives and threatening Overwatch, whilst the Bolter ones were a big thing in Ultramarine lists, and these are bigger in Salamander lists. I've just got a ton of them from buying the cheap kit, put together kits that I got when I first started playing back in May. And, well, they've been kind of nerfed. Durable, high toughness, high wound units are getting better and better in 9th edition as the whole game is about holding objectives now, more so than killing your opponent. You can often win the game by, I don't know, having your entire army decimated as long as you win on victory points. Aggressors were good for those roles, except now they've lost 2 abilities. The first of which is standing still and firing twice for Overwatch. That is gone, and now they don't get to ignore the penalty for advancing and shooting, which is only really relevant for the Bolter ones, but again, that's also gone. There are some like inherently almost like buff elements to any Gravis armor thing. For example, only Primaris units now have the transhuman physiology stratagem, which is a stratagem you can use to ignore all wound rolls of 1s, 2s and 3s. Only works on any Primaris unit, but not the Firstborn. So they inherently get that, and there's a new strategy that gives +1 to their save against any damage 1 weapons if they're getting fired out by weight of fire shots. But I mean, honestly, with the debuffs, you might want other Gravis units, Eradicators, or just other Primaris units like Blade Guard Veterans. They have been nerfed, and their point cost doesn't seem to have changed accordingly. Next up, I can't show you the model because I don't own one, but I was thinking of picking up 1 or 2 very recently off of eBay, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. The Repulsor has got some really heavy nerfs. First of all, it used to be able to take a shield dome to give it a 4+ save, which allowed it to survive heavy arms fire from enemy units. Now that's only a 5-up save, so they've nerfed the invuln. It's still got an invuln, which I think is incredibly valuable, but it's been nerfed. In addition to that, it no longer flies. All of the hover tanks had the fly keyword removed, which means you can't put units in this, plant it behind cover, not get shot at, and then fly over the cover in your first turn. You're going to have to care about terrain. Terrain now really, really matters for the hover tanks. And lastly, it used to have a -2 to the charge rolls of incoming charges from melee units. That's now a stratagem. It's not inbuilt into the unit. So there's been a hell of a lot of debuffs. Supposedly the point cost is slightly lower because the guns are hard baked into its profile now and essentially free, so it's a little bit cheaper. But the Repulsors were a mainstay of a lot of Marine armies, ways of delivering things up the board. I wanted them to either sling some assault intercessors straight into my enemy lines to disrupt them, or just to push Eradicators or Blade Guard veterans or even Aggressors up into the mid-board. But I guess perhaps that's not even a thing you want to do anymore. It's not even like they're trying to make other transports viable. There are some debuffs across the board in some of these ways. Like, for example, the Rhino can no longer self-repair. So Marines transports have gotten a little bit weaker, barring one, which I'll come to in a moment. But I'm wondering if maybe this is an attempt to make Marines less of a gun-line armoured army or an armour-protected army, because putting resilient troops in a transport is a very good way of covering ground and sitting on objectives and forcing your opponent to commit a lot of fire to crack the transport and then kill the stuff inside. Maybe this is a balancing way of trying to get the Marines not to be like that in how you compose your armies. Then on the topic of Impulsor nerfs, the Repulsors. This is our Repulsor Executioner. They've also been pretty nerfed. Again, it's all the same stuff, really. There's no invuln save on these things in general. There never has been, which is one of their big downsides. One of their big balancing elements, I guess, because they're so easy to pop. But it no longer flies. So hiding these on turn 1 to then fly them over a building and just hammer your opponent with fire is not an option anymore. And then again, the Repulsor field has supposedly been taken away, making them easier to charge, making them more vulnerable to just melee in general. Yeah. Add to that the fact that all reroll orders from captains and lieutenants and other similar things now, they need to have the core keyword to benefit. That's all Marine troops and Dreadnoughts. They all get the core keyword. Terminators get it as well. I think Blade Guard vets have got it. They all get rerolls from your captains and your lieutenants. These things no longer do, as do none of the tanks. So really, this isn't just the Repulsor Execution and the Repulsor. It's just Marine tanks in general have kind of got debuffed. So it seems to me, again, like they're kind of pushing Marines away from these heavy armoured gunline options, or at least trying to make people vary up how they play. I'm not mad about it, I just find it very interesting from a game balance perspective. Next up, we have the Eradicators. They've been debuffed. They can no longer advance and total annihilation, or whatever it's called, when they get to fire double shots at the same target, when they all fire at the same target. That's been removed. That's a whole very minor debuff. Okay, I'm actually kidding. This is going to be one of my winners, is that the Eradicators are still insane. The fact they have debuffed them a little bit, they can't advance and totally obliterate or totally annihilate or whatever it's called. I guess, but they're still absurd. So yeah, I'll talk more about these in a moment, but this is not a downside. They've lost a thing, but they're still really good, and I'm going to be picking up 2 more boxes of these. I need to have a full squad of 6 and another extra unit of 3, I think. The actual, real, final loser of all this is the Smash Captain. He is a Marine captain with a jetpack, a storm shield, and a hammer. And the Blood Angels love these, so my chapter loves them. Traditionally speaking, you'd take one of these and you would sling it up the board, or you'd deep strike it on turn 2, you'd throw it into their armour, their knight or whatever after you've cleared their screens with some weight of fire from bolters and such. And then you'd use this bad boy to smash a hole in those heavy backlines and just cause absolute pandemonium with a huge damage output from one guy. I know if you're new to Warhammer, you might think I'm talking complete shit, but this thing would take down knights and like tank lines and stuff. There was already some debuffs in the way that charging worked, how you can consolidate and then fight again in 9th. So Blood Angels and the whole Slam Gwinius strategy kind of got debuffed going into 9th anyway. Now there's a lot of extra changes. So captains no longer reroll their own dice, because they only cause rerolls, as I said, with the tanks on core units. And captains are not core. They can't inspire themselves to reroll dice. So now with a Thunderhammer, you're hitting on 3s, not re-rolling 1s, which is a big difference. On top of that, the Thunderhammer has been nerfed to only -2 AP, so you're not cracking through those weaker armors. The Storm Shield is still good, but again, it's not as resilient as it was before with a 4-up invuln instead of a 3-up. And lastly, the other big real nerf to these, especially in the Blood Angels Alpha Strike variants, is that they're taking away the ability to fight again. It used to be that for 3 CP you could pick a character, or I think it was infantry unit, and they could fight again. It meant you could slam into a Titan and smash the hell out of it, and then when the Knight hits your back and doesn't kill you because you've got your Storm Shield and your Transhuman Physiology, which you can't use on non-Primaris models now, so that's gone. And then you just pay 3 CP to fight again. And with the Blood Angels, you'll pay 1 CP at the beginning of the fight phase to get D3 extra hits as well. 1 CP before the game to get Visions of Sanguinius, so got extra attack on the charge. And you were just hammering in like 9 or 10 Thunderhammer hits, and then you're paying 3 CP to hit him with 8 or 9 Thunderhammer hits. And yeah, it was good. You can no longer fight again, even on death now. Even on death, the 2 CP strategy for a character to fight on death is just to get them to fight before they don't fight at all. You can't do it if you've already fought. So there used to be a time when this one little guy would take down models 10 times his size. And that feels like it's gone. And in some ways that's sad. This is one of the losers that I'm the most upset about. I've grown very attached to Thunderhammers, Smash Captains, and just going fucking ham on people's backlines in the first couple months of me learning this hobby. Smash Captains were the first thing I heard about in terms of a competitive strategy, and they fit right into the Blood Angels ethos of just alpha striking your opponent. And well, it's kind of gone. And that's kind of sad because it's my first big foray into like thinking a bit sweaty about Warhammer. That said, Goonhammer did talk about how the chapter master allows you to target a character once per turn to reroll all hits that have failed, or all hits if you want to, which means he can target himself. So he can get his rerolls if he's the chapter master, which is an extra 40 points, making him a very expensive model. Also, now you can only have 1 captain per detachment, which means you've got a Smash Captain, you can't have a captain supporting your Dreadnoughts further back, or your heavy intercessors, or whatever you've got them with. However, Goonhammer claims that if you've got a chapter master, you can then have a captain as well. You can have a chapter master and a captain. I couldn't find anyone else confirming that in any videos or articles, so hopefully Goonhammer have got that right, which means the Smash chapter master might be a thing. It's not as good as it used to be. You can't take 3 of them like you used to be able to do. So yeah, it's cool to see the game evolving and changing, then trying to shift potentially broken and dumb things out of the metagame, but I'm sad to see Smash Captains go. On to the winners. So, you can now upgrade to Chapter Master and Chief Librarian and Chief Tech Man and all that. All the extra upgrades you get for your HQ slots are now points-based as opposed to CP, as an actual in-army cost. So, to upgrade a Captain to a Chapter Master, it will cost you 40 points. The reason this is a winner is a fewfold, really. Firstly, it takes me back to the days of my youth when everything, like from guns to war gear to special abilities, were all added on by points. It's kind of like a nostalgic throwback to how 40k was once upon a time. I also like the fact that they're separating out CP and the points you spend on your armies. Points are spent before the game on your stuff, and CPs are spent on stratagems during the game to enact strategies or commands or orders. I like separating out those 2 resource management systems separate. And thirdly, it helps to make the Marines feel more elite. If you've got to spend between 20, 30, 40, I think that might be the biggest one, but 40 points upgrading one singular model, it starts to bring down your total model count, and it makes you have to try and consider what you're going to fit into your list, and it feels more elite. Although the Necrons kind of do have a similar thing with their... I think we're going to see this more and more across all codexes, as abilities and war gear and things you add on like warlord traits and such will all be points now as opposed to CP. So I would hazard a guess that when Death Visions of Sanguinius is written up in the new Blood Angels book later in the year, I'll imagine it'll be a points cost, not a CP cost. On that note, I won't go into this in too much detail, but my next winner is Blood Angels characters. Across the board, they have had upgrades in their abilities, extra stuff. Brother Corbulo can now reanimate multiple models a turn, and I haven't even played with him since I bought him at the beginning of my foray back into 40k. So I'm going to paint up Brother Corbulo and start filling as my chief apothecary. Mephiston didn't get an upgrade or a change in any way, but his point cost finally went back down again, which is nice. And then we come to the Librarian Dreadnought, who not only now has Duty Eternal like all Dreadnoughts do, which, spoiler alert, my next point is that Dreadnoughts are better, which is... I love Dreadnoughts. But also, he now has an extra attack in his stat line, so he gets an extra attack on his attack characteristic for the Librarian Dread. And also, if you take... a metal gun. All metal guns across the game are better, so that's another option. That everything with metal guns is better, including Eradicators. Everything with metal guns is better with more consistent to slightly higher damage output, and he has that now as well. But also, his False Halberd is an additional attack. So now you've got an extra attack in the attack line, plus the halberd, plus all the fists. He's just punching twice more a turn than he used to. That's before you start quickening him or using stratagems and such, like Red Rampage. Yeah, it seems like, again, If Smash Captains are worse, perhaps Librarian Dread Smashy time might be even better than it used to be, especially with the addition of Duty Eternal. And that brings me to my next winner, Dreadnoughts. Here is the first vehicle I painted since coming back to the hobby, which is a Redemptor Dread. And I started to move away from Redemptors a little bit because of the lack of an invuln save, making them a little bit less resilient than, say, a Contemptor or Relic Contemptor or Leviathans, the Forge World stuff, okay? I know Forge World is slightly power crept, whatever. But the Redemptor and all of the Dreadnoughts in the main Codex, so this, the Contemptor, the Box Dreads, the Librarian Dreads, all those ones, Death Company Dreads, all of them now have Duty Eternal, the old stratagem that reduced all incoming damage by 1 to a minimum of 1, so Lasfire, Melter Fire, 2 damage shots from Heavy Bolters now, all of that reduced by 1, is now inherently built into every single Dreadnought. I think their points might be going up ever so slightly to accommodate that, but also the Redemptor now has a fist that does D3 plus 3. It used to be D6, so it could do 1 to 6 damage. Very, very swingy on where it could be at. Now it's D3 plus 3, you've got a minimum of 2 damage up to a maximum of 6, which is better. And if you want to put flamers on these bad boys now, it's kind of worth it because all flamers have been increased by a few inches as well, which kind of makes the aggressors have 1 buff, I guess. But my point is, Dreadnoughts are just better now. That and them being core means that they're going to benefit from the reroll auras of your captains, your lieutenants, and similar characters, which means that actually they might end up being the de facto go-to gun weapon platform as opposed to executioners and such. Obviously they don't carry as many guns, but they still carry pretty good guns like this thing. One of the downsides is that Bolter Discipline no longer affects these or Centurions. That means if your Dreadnought is just walking up the board and is still more than half its distance away from its chest-mounted bolters, or any other Dreadnought for underarm bolters, they're only firing the normal shots. But half range, you still get your rapid fire. That's a small price to pay. I think I'd rather, if they give you the option to turn off Bolter Discipline on a Dreadnought and give it Duty Eternal at the beginning of a match, I'd choose the Duty Eternal every single time. I love Dreadnoughts. This is my converted, kit bashed, if you will, Death Company Dread. Redemptors don't come in Death Company variants yet. Not until we see the next Blood Angels book, and maybe we'll see that. But either way, this is a Death Company variant, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So two more things that are winners. Firstly, the Eradicators. That's right, we're back on Eradicators again. I made a joke about them, but Melter Guns are better now with more consistent damage output. They now have the option to have multi-melters or heavy melters in there, and the squad size has been increased. I mean, I'm bringing them up because they are, as they were before, a power-crept way to sell Indomitus boxes, and they will still be one of the best Space Marine units going. I wouldn't be surprised if you see 2 to 3 of these in every sweaty, try-hard Space Marine list going. I know I'm going to be picking up 2 or 3 more boxes of these bad boys over the course of the next month or so that when and if I play in some competitive environment, I can just bring a load of Eradicators as my anti-tank. And with tanks getting worse, losing their fly keyword on the Primaris ones, and losing the repulsor field, not being core. Don't forget Eradicators, I believe, are also core. I could be wrong on that, actually. I have to double check that, but I believe they're also core. So you get rerolls on captains too, because I think it's all infantry troops are core in the Space Marine Codex. Yeah, there's not really much point in taking your Las talents and stuff now unless you really need the extra range, because the Eradicator guns are really that good. And then lastly, I guess, is the obvious one. It's just all Firstborn Marines getting extra wounds. Like, Death Company getting extra wounds make them less of a glass cannon, and even bikes have got, I think it's 2 wounds per model now, to really bring them up into being an option. I mean, they're not as good as Outriders because of the extra attacks that Outriders get on the charge, but at least they're kind of semi-viable now, and that'll probably help out the Dark Angels and the White Scar list that want to play all the old bikes. There's still some squads that probably will never see any play, like Assault Squads, because they only get 1 attack per model or whatever. But the veterans, put a jump pack on a veteran, give them a Power Fist, which is probably better than a Thunderhammer these days at 10 points less. And you suddenly got 2 wounds, you got 20 wounds falling out of the sky to start punching the shit out of your opponent, and they're not going to enjoy it. And with the nerfs to like the Impulsors and stuff, perhaps taking a Land Raider Crusader, which is a thing that I've heard laughed about since I got back into the hobby, saying these things aren't good enough. But a Land Raider Crusader filled with 16 Firstborn Marines, whether it be Assaults or Stern Guard or Vanguard Vets, that's a Land Raider, which is still a hard thing to actually get off the table. And it needs some commitment to shift the thing. And that's got 32 wounds worth of Marines in there. Let's say you roll a couple of ones, only 28 wounds of Marines pour out of it. That's still 28 wounds of Space Marines pouring out of a Land Raider with bolters and melter guns or whatever the fuck you... Yeah, I think Firstborn getting given the extra wound is a fantastic thing in many ways. Not only just because I get to play with all the old little mini squatty Marines that I appreciate from my childhood, but it makes a load of old units that weren't any good either better or actually playable, like all the veteran squads. I guess Devastators were playable. People, as far as I understand, were dropping that out of drop pods and then LAS or more commonly grav gun firing into enemy tank lines and stuff like that. Cool. Now they've all got 2 wounds each, which means they might actually survive a volley of fire from an Onslaught Gatling cannon, for example. So I think making all these other options in the Codex viable, all the old options viable, in some ways it instills me with faith that they aren't just trying to make people spend money through making things obsolete. Of course, there will be conspiracy theories that the addition of the extra wounds is because they had a lot of Firstborn shit to shift in the warehouse. But sometimes you can't win with a community, right? I've seen people on Reddit being angry that they didn't get their new book. I've seen people being angry that they got a new book within a month of the old book coming out. I've seen people be angry that the new book doesn't work with the old book, but I've also seen other people be angry that they might need to carry the old books, like the Second Awakenings, because that's more books to an event or a game store. And basically, it's just 5 different complaints that are all from 5 different sides of the same coin. And it just goes to show you can't please everybody. On the whole, I'm excited about the changes. It's weird because this is my first big change. I mean, I learned a bit of 8th, then learned 9th, and the change wasn't that much. This feels like real 9th. It feels like a lot of stuff that I've already learned I'm going to have to unlearn. Like, for example, the Aggressors don't double shoot when they stand still. That's the thing I find ingrained in my mind when I'm playing with my friends. I need to not just randomly say that out loud. One of them believes me, and then we do it, and then we realise we've cheated. There's going to be a lot of things to unlearn and learn, but ultimately, I think it's really exciting. I got the whole Necron Codex to go through next. I've kind of been ignoring it a little bit. I'll be deep diving that more over the weekend as I build my Silent King and get ready for some Necron games next week. I'll be streaming, by the way. I'll be streaming Tabletop Simulator games a little bit this week. I've streamed some last week and the week before. And next week I'll be streaming maybe once or twice as well with a new Codex for Marines and for Necrons. So if you want to check that out, check me out on twitch.tv/PleasantKenobi. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it gives you some food for thought. Let me know if there's something in the new Codex that gets you excited that I haven't mentioned in the comment section below. Are you excited to play Centurions in your Blood Angels list? Are you excited to play fucking all this stuff in your Death Watch list? Let me know in the comment section below. Let me know if I've missed anything. And if I've got something wrong, do let me know as well. I'm making bullet pointed notes after reading articles and watching videos. I wish I had the actual Codex in front of me, but sometimes you gotta make the content to get those clicks. Either way, I'm loving it. I fucking love Warhammer. I now really want to play now that I've spoken about it so much. Be good to one another, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.